and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I've got some hot topics here for you, and all the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. westernjournalism.com, and it says, Trump says, unlike Obama, he will enforce red lines and not draw them. And a little bit and see what this has to say here. Trump on Monday highlighted the difference between a president who talks and one who acts. I don't like drawing red lines, but I act if I have to act. Eric Bolling on the premiere of the Fox News Specialist. During the interview, Trump said North Korea is his biggest current foreign policy concern, but would not discuss his plans to address his concerns. I'm not like President Obama, where you draw a red line in the sand, and then lots of bad things happen, and he never goes over the red line, Trump said. I actually covered his red line for him in Syria, Trump said, referring to former President Barack Obama's declaration the U.S. would act if Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons on his own people. Although Assad did so, the U.S. never acted. Video in this one if you want to pull it up to take a look at that. Seems to be taking a break here. Well, come on, hamster. Trump made it clear. Let's see, when the hamster gets going, he goes a little too far. Well, come on, hamster. Trump made it clear he views North Korea's escalation of its missile program and nuclear program as major threats. It's very, very threatening to us and many other allies. If you look at South Korea, if you look at Japan and others, it's a very horrible thing that's going on. Statements are very inflammatory. They're horrible. So we'll have to see, the president said. Like in military and foreign policy to a chess game, it will be to avoid telling the enemy do. And get it to scroll up a little bit more. Oh. I've been pretty well known for saying like nothing to the military, he said, when they announced they were going into Moselle in 4 months, and then they said in 3 months, we're going in next week. Why do they keep saying that? Quick battle for Mosul. Guess what? It's still going on because the enemy knew they were coming. This hamster is being a slacker this morning, isn't he? Don't reveal operational details about military activity. Just don't talk about it. You have to do, and you don't talk about it, he said. So when people say, well, I was yesterday, exactly when would you go in? You go in. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't want to talk about it. I can say this: Kim Jong-un's very threatening to the world. During the interview, Bolling asked Trump about the safety of American troops in South Korea and along the DMZ between the two Koreas. Nobody's safe, he said. I mean, who's safe? Weapons. I'd like to say they're very safe. These are great, brave soldiers. These are great, brave troops. And they know the situation. We have 28,000 troops on the line, and they're right there. We're probably not safe over here. If he gets the long-range missiles, we're not safe either. So we have to do something about it, and we'll have to see what happens. And unlike Obama, he has taken the head-on approach to fighting ISIS. And we have to solve that, he said. The heads being chopped off, I said to myself, I've never seen that since medieval times. I have to solve the problem. That was off of Western journalism. State Department issues European travel alert. If you want to pull it up to watch that. U.S. State Department issued an alert to all citizens traveling abroad in Europe, citing the continued threat of terrorist attacks in the region. The travel alert comes on the heels of terror attacks in France, Russia, Sweden, and the United Kingdom that demonstrate to the State Department that ISIS and their affiliates have the ability to plan and execute terrorist attacks in Europe. Governments continue to counterterrorism operations. The department nevertheless remains concerned about the potential for future terrorist attacks, the alert says. Citizens should always be alert to the possibility that terrorist sympathizers or self-radicalized extremists may conduct attacks with little or no warning. Stream is as high as it's ever been in Europe, CNN in February. Latest estimates show that nearly 2,000 ISIS fighters have returned to Europe after waging jihad in Iraq and Syria. Many returning fighters are still committed to the terror group's mission and are believed to be plotting new attacks. Called on U.S. citizens to exercise vigilance locations across Europe, which are a frequent target of ISIS-inspired terrorist attacks. Extremists continue to focus on tourist locations, transportation hubs, market, shopping malls, and local government facilities as viable targets. In addition, hotels, clubs, restaurants, places of work, profile events, educational institutions, airports, and other soft targets remain priority locations for possible attacks, the travel alert states. Terrorists persist in employing a variety of tactics, including firearms, explosives, using vehicles as ramming devices, and sharp-edged weapons that are difficult to detect prior to an attack. 4 high-profile terrorist attacks in less than 2 months. On March 22nd, Khalid Massoud mowed down pedestrians with a truck on London's Westminster Bridge, killing 4 and injuring many others. The terrorist was shot dead by police. On April the 3rd, at least 11 people were killed and 51 injured in an explosion on the St. Petersburg metro in Russia. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev attacked a terrorist act. On April the 7th, another terrorist mowed down citizens with a truck in Stockholm, Sweden, killing 4 and injuring 15. The attacker, Akalov, a failed asylum seeker from, told police he was a member of ISIS and had achieved what he set out to do. The gunman opened fire van on the Champs-Élysées shopping boulevard in Paris, and ISIS claimed responsibility for that attack. It was off of Western journalism. Syrian issues looms as Trump schedules phone call with Putin. On this one too. President Donald Trump was scheduled to speak by phone Tuesday with Russian leader Putin, as one Russian alliance in Syria was impossible. The call is the 3rd contact thus far between the leaders of the 2 world superpowers. The first came in January, the second after a terrorist attack on the St. Petersburg subway. During a Tuesday press conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who was visiting Putin, the Russian leader was asked about his relationship with Trump and the United States. That we will achieve understanding on joint measures in this very important and very delicate area of international politics, Putin said. Certainly, without involvement of such a country as the U.S., these problems cannot be solved efficiently. Sivkov, Russian Academy of Rocket and Artillery Science, said Russia would pursue its own military interest in Syria. An alliance with the United States is impossible, he said. The impulsiveness of decision-making that resulted in U.S. attack on a Syrian air base in response to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad on its own people. Responsibility for the weapons attack. The lack of consideration of these decisions and lack of clear goal and assessment of the consequences sharply raises the possibility of military conflict, Sivkov said. When Putin and Trump moves any issues forward, it will likely be followed up next week when Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is scheduled to meet Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov at the Arctic Council meeting in Fairbanks, Alaska. Trump and Putin could have their first face-to-face meeting during the 20 summit meeting in Germany. Trump and Putin are also snarled by claims that Russia interfered in last year's American elections. Russia has been accused of similar meddling in France's upcoming election. We never interfere with political process of other countries, Putin said Tuesday after repeating past denials. Trump began his presidency seeking to improve American-Russian relations, but last month noted that in the wake over tensions over Syria, relations were at an all-time low. Articles off BizPack Review. As soon as the hamster decides to... Here we go. Thanks, Obama. Iran beefing up its military big time and using U.S. cash to do it. It's on its way to becoming the leading state sponsor of Islamic terrorism in the world, thanks to the disastrous Iran nuclear deal signed under former President Obama. Iran has increased its defense budget 145% under President Hassan Rouhani, using the billions of dollars that were unfrozen under Obama's deal to build up its weapons stockpile, the Washington Free Beacon reported. The U.S. gave Iran fistfuls of cash to build a massive army to annihilate us. Iranian military leaders bragged to local newspapers that the Islamic Republic's army was being fortified into an offensive juggernaut. Under the Iran nuclear deal pushed by Obama, Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, promised never to acquire nuclear weapons. In the lopsided agreement, Obama lifted economic sanctions that had crippled Iran financially for decades, unfroze $150 billion in assets, and gave Iran $400 million in cash. President Trump has repeatedly slammed the deal, calling it dangerous and stupid. It was the single worst deal ever, Trump told the New York Post. It's a disgrace that a deal like that was even signed. It made Iran a power from a country that was ready to fall apart. When Sean Duffy agrees, President Obama flat out caved in to Iran when he handed them disastrous nuclear deal and $1.7 billion in cash payments that could assist Iran's military, told the Free Beacon. So it's no surprise that the world's leading sponsor of terrorism would feel emboldened to become more aggressive in the region and flex its military muscle. Michael Rubin, a former Pentagon advisor, isn't surprised that Iran played the United States for fools under Obama. Rubin said this is exactly what Iran did between 1998 and 2005 when it profited from a lucrative trade deal with the European Union. Might as well have wired the money directly into the accounts of those seeking to enhance Iran's military or sponsor terrorism, Rubin said. Another Pentagon insider agreed. Iranian military buildup coupled with an offensive posture is a threat to the United States and our allies. It also serves as an important reminder of why the Obama administration's cash infusion to Iran was so dangerous. Decisions are precisely why former Obama officials say his wimpiness against foreign adversaries left the world a more dangerous place. Obama had the capability, but not the will, to retaliate against our enemies, says Barry Pavel, a former senior director on the National Security Council. Obama left a more dangerous world, he says. I have for you is off of Breitbart. Hamster's running in the wheel here. He's working on it. Nearly 46,000 foreign-born, whoops, let me try that again. Okay, nearly 46,000 foreign-born criminals in federal prisons, report shows. Get it to scroll up a little bit. Oh, come on. Okay, there are nearly 46,000 foreign-born criminals sitting in federal prisons, according to data released by the Department of Justice, or the DOJ. Report by Attorney General Jeff Sessions, 45,493 foreign-born convict criminals were found to be in federal U.S. prisons, with the vast majority being illegal aliens. In total, there are roughly 190,000 inmates in federal prisons. Of the 45,493 foreign-born inmates, only 3,939, while the majority, 41,528 inmates, aliens. More than 54%, 1,520 alien inmates, have already been issued deportation orders. 3.4% of those inmates could be deported. 528 illegal alien inmates are awaiting a deportation decision by an immigration judge. Meanwhile, only 26 inmates are asylum seekers. Sessions said in a statement that the crime analysis and the broad number of foreign-born convicted criminals in the U.S. prisons is just another reason why President Donald Trump's plan to build border wall Mexico border is needed. Commit additional crimes in the United States are a threat to public safety and a burden on our criminal justice system. This is why we must secure our borders through a wall and effective law enforcement. We must cooperation between federal, state, and local governments as we strive to fulfill our sacred duty of protecting and serving the American people. There is currently no path to which the federal government can analyze how many foreign-born convicted criminals are in state and local prisons. The statement noted that the DOJ is in the process of establishing such a program to gain access to such data. The article that I have for you is off of Liberty Headlines, and it says, Dems silent after DNC vice chair defends pro-Sierra organizer. This originally came off of InfoWars, and it says the Democratic National Committee has yet to respond to recent comments by its newly elected vice chairman defending a Sharia law advocate reportedly linked to the terrorist organization Hamas. New vice chairman and the New York State Assemblyman respond directly, consistently, and with all heart and soul to any criticism of pro-Sierra advocate Linda Sarr, set to deliver address to the City University of New York, called the CUNY, later this month. I put out this tweet, says, making it clear, if you keep coming after El Sarsour, we're going to respond directly, consistently, with all heart and soul. Fall back. Blake's comments represented his own personal views or those of the DNC, as neither Blake nor any representative from the DNC have responded to requests for comments. Blake is not the only politician from New York offering praise for Sarsour. New York Senator Kristen Gillibrand called Sarsour one of the suffragists in a piece for Time magazine last month. Senator Gillibrand's support for Sarsour is notable, given that just weeks earlier Sarsour shared a stage with Razmia Oda, a convicted terrorist involved in a bombing in Tel Aviv in 1969 that left 2 students dead. Oda was convicted of providing fraudulent information on her visa application when she entered the United States over 20 years ago and is set to be deported. I have for you headlines. It says Trump administration see-through fence system is a border wall. Breitbart, it says Donald White House communications team is claiming inaccurately that there is a border wall funding in the spending bill before Congress right now. The move comes as the administration is facing political heat for the failure to obtain federal appropriations in the new omnibus spending bill to pay for the construction of a border wall, as President Trump promised. The latest controversy began with White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer tweeting out photos of a levee wall along the border and see-through border fence that illegal aliens and drugs and human traffickers regularly cut through. Spicer argued, without calling any of them a wall like the one Trump promised on the campaign trail, that the president just negotiated spending deal where we can build these. He explicitly did not call the photos a border wall on his Twitter account. Spicer's tweet is I'm trying to say that again. Technically, Spicer's tweet is accurate. The spending bill, which funds the government until the end of the fiscal year, does account for the construction of levee walls and extra steel fencing, but that is far short of the president's campaign promise of an actual border wall. But what Spicer did next was highly problematic and potentially hurts President Trump's efforts to succeed later in the year in delivering an actual border wall when the next spending bill comes up in September. Spicer directed one of his deputies, Lindsay Walters, to call Breitbart News and pitched the photos in Spicer's tweet as a border wall. Article is off of, says 2 GOP legislators. Well, come on. 2 GOP legislators propose American replacement bill plus amnesty. Come on, hamster. 2 GOP legislators are introducing legislation to let states annually import 500,000 foreign and white-collar professionals to replace Americans who have fallen out of the workforce and into drug addiction. The bill is needed because companies can't hire the employees they want amid the massive decline in the number of Americans who are seeking work. Ron Johnson told an event hosted Wednesday by the Cato Institute. Why can't Wisconsin manufacturers, why can't small businesses find enough people to work? Johnson asked during a speech in a Senate hearing room with supporters of the replacement bill. He continued, you got to ask those hard questions. It is not going to be a government program that is going to solve that worker decline, but smart government policy, things like bills we're going to be introducing with the help of Cato today, is a really good direction to move. Let's see how much better the states do. My guess is that they will do a lot better than one-size-fits-all federal foreign worker program. The bill would also, the bill would allow states to get visas for additional foreign workers per year, plus a population-based share of another 245,000 visas, plus a share of any visas not used by other states. Foreign workers would start at 495,000 in the first year, not counting the additional family members of each imported worker. The bill would also create an amnesty because the visas could be given to 11 million plus illegals living in the United States, including those who returned to the United States after being deported. He has 50 co-sponsors, but acknowledged the likely unpopularity of his American replacement bill, which is formally titled State-Sponsored Visa Pilot Program of 2017. The acknowledgement came at the end of his statement when he thanked the Cato Group counterpart, Colorado GOP Representative Ken Buck, for backing the replacement bill. To have the courage, we're probably a lightning rod on this bill, Johnson said in his videotaped speech. Buck said he will not formally introduce the bill yet. I'm not ready to sponsor it in the House yet. It is important to take the bill out of the oven when it's baked. In November of 2016, Donald Trump won the presidency partly because many blue-collar Americans, including many in Wisconsin, opposed the economic impact of cheap labor immigration. In January, Trump emphasized that his administration mantra is Buy American, Hire American. Since then, he has sharply reduced illegal immigration and has proposed popular plans to reform legal immigration and the contract worker programs. In a statement, Johnson spoke at length about the new plague of opioid addiction in our country and quoted from an article describing the huge extent of worker dropout amid the post-2008 combination punch of recession and mass immigration. According to the article by demographer Nicholas Eberstadt, says the collapse in work rates for U.S. adults between 2008 and 2010 was roughly twice the amplitude of what had previously been the country's worst post-war recession back in the early 1980s. In that previous steep recession, it took America 5 years to retain the adult work rates recorded at the start of 1980. This time, the U.S. job market has, as yet, in early 2017, scarcely begun to claw its way back up to the work rates of 2007, much less back to the work rates from early 2000. U.S. adult work rates never recovered entirely from the recession of 2001, much less the crash of 2008. The subsequent social pathologies, I would argue, are being driven by government policy, Johnson told the hearing room, and he cited Medicaid's distribution of free opioids in the country. But it is not going to be a government program that is going to solve that worker dropout problem, Johnson continued. So the new visa bill, he said, is targeted to making sure that American businesses have the labor they need. The new bill is required because we need strong and vibrant workforce, said Buck, as he declined to discuss any effort to fix the worker dropout problem. I think we've got to deal with able-bodied individuals in this country who are not working. We still need to address the feeling among Americans that are workers in the country who are not working and need to be working. Both Buck and Johnson are former business executives. The Buck-Johnson replacement bill would amplify the federal government's employee importation policies. Under current law, the federal government annually imports roughly 1 million legal immigrants plus contract workers such as H-1B therapists and professors. The immigrants and contract workers do grow the economy, but they also compete for jobs against each year's cohort of 4 million American high school and college graduates. The flow of cheap immigrant labor has many effects. It does expand the consumer economy as it also shifts $500 billion from employees to employers and Wall Street and local government spending by $60 billion a year. It also reduces the incentive for employers to recruit disengaged Americans or build new facilities in high unemployment areas, reduces businesses' demands on schools to rebuild vocational training departments, and reduces business investment in labor-saving technology. Nationwide, roughly 10% of American prime-age men, or 7 million men aged 25 to 54, have stayed out of the nation's workforce of 160 million glut of cheap immigrant labor and the resulting low wage rates. Many working-age Americans are not trying to get jobs and are not participating in the nation's labor force, largely because of low wage rates, according to an August statement by Jason Furman, the chief economic advisor to former President Barack Obama. That huge population of non-working rural Americans is a major part of the opioid epidemic. In 2014, roughly 47,000 in the U.S. died from drug overdoses, especially from heroin and other opiates. Heroin overdoses deaths more than tripled between 2010 and 2015. The bill would allow the additional incoming workers and their families to get hugely valuable prize of citizenship after several years of work. But that offer of citizenship creates a compelling incentive for companies to discriminate against Americans by hiring the foreigners eager to work long hours at low pay for the future reward of citizenship. The prize of citizenship already acts as a government-provided deferred bonus for many foreign contract workers, such as white-collar professionals who compliantly work long hours at low pay for several years in the hope of getting citizenship. In contrast, Americans from companies' pre-profit accounts, so companies have an incentive to hire foreign workers by offering them the citizenship bonus that is paid by government and taxpayers. The Johnson-Buck replacement legislation is backed by the self-described libertarian Cato Institute, even though the legislation would give state legislators huge power over the life or death of many companies. For example, the legislation would give the state government the power to provide at least 5,000 low-wage workers each year to company executives who cooperate with state political leaders. State politicians the power to ruin executives by from companies who disagree with the preferences of state politicians. The next article is off of Conservative Tribune. Trump says we need to shut the government down. Trump is not happy about the way the budget that funds the government through September the 30th is shaking out. On Twitter, Trump, in his frustration, said that our country needs a good shutdown to set things straight. Yikes. The budget needs 60 votes to pass the Senate, and that's what is causing a lot of the major issues. However, the right-wing M noted on Twitter, it seems as though the Democrats won a lot more than the Republicans did. Right-wing M tweeted this out. It says, budget deal reached, Obamacare is funded, sanctuary cities are funded, Planned Parenthood is funded, EPA is funded, Wall not funded. Rightly pointed out that the budget deal funded the Affordable Care Act, grants to sanctuary cities, Planned Parenthood, and the Environmental Protection Agency, but not the border wall Trump had campaigned on. That's not a lot of winning, at least not if you're a conservative. No wonder Trump's ticked. Drop the Senate vote on the budget to a simple majority so that the GOP can beat the Democrats back. Tweets is the reason for the plan negotiated between the Republicans and Democrats is that we need 60 votes in the Senate, which are not there. We either elect more Republican senators in 2018 or change the rules now to 51%. Our country needs a good shutdown in September to fix the mess. He is afraid to have a government shutdown, but they ought not to be. The Democrats will blame them for the shutdown just like they did under Obama, but who cares? The Democrats will say that entitlement check, our seniors will go hungry. But according to Bankrate, that's just not the case. As Bankrate reported, it's likely the federal government will act to make Social Security checks continue to flow to beneficiaries, and the government will likely continue making payments to provide for medical services through Medicare and Medicaid. In other words, come on, guys. That liberals don't like government shutdowns because they demonstrate how little what the government does matters. Now, a vote as drastic as what Trump calls for did take place in the confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, but it may not happen this time. Democrats are trying to hold the country hostage, and it's high time that the GOP and Trump put them in their place. Article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says Vice President defends budget deal on Limbaugh show. Vice President Mike Pence called Rush Limbaugh's show today to defend the budget deal struck by President Trump and congressional Republicans and Democrats. Instantly, he was challenged by the most listened to radio host in the nation after many media and in outside groups blasted the plan for its failure to keep many campaign promises. If this is what happens, Mr. Vice President, why vote Republican? Limbaugh asked. What is the point of voting Republican if the Democrats are going to continue to win practically 95% of their objectives, such as in this last budget deal? Pence called the agreement a clear win for the American people and praised the president for his negotiation capabilities and commitment to national defense. Look, the vice president responded to Limbaugh. You've had Washington, D.C., that has been, paralyzed by gridlock and partisan infighting for many years. And in this new president, you have someone who was able to bring people together and make a $21 billion increase in defense spending at a time of great challenge for American interests around the world. Pence claimed Trump was able to get Democrats to back off years of habit of demanding increases in domestic spending in exchange for higher spending on protecting the country, he said. This ended that. But Limbaugh pushed back. If I'm the Democrats, he told the vice president, $21 billion, $15 billion for defense, that was not originally authorized. That's a smart price to pay for continuing to fund refugee resettlement, continuing to fund Planned Parenthood, continuing to fund sanctuary cities, continuing to fund the EPA, and not build the wall. Democrats clearly think this is a big win, and they're confident they can block Trump's agenda after his spending bill for the rest of Trump's term. There isn't anything of the president's agenda in this budget, he added, and people are beginning to ask, when's that going to happen? Pence stuck to his guns on Trump's priorities to strengthen the military, which he said was the largest increase in spending since Reagan administration. He also said protecting the homeland was boosted in the budget deal also. This bill includes the largest increase in border security funding in 10 years, with enough, as the president said, to make a down payment on a border wall. The vice president said in the interview, "We're replacing ineffective and failing fencing and wall with unbreakable barrier. We're beginning to build the wall already. And look at the statistics, Rush. Illegal immigration, border crossings are down more than 60%. The president, oops, it jumped a little bit. The vice president promised the budget agreement represented only 5 months that will move the ball forward on the priorities of the American people. When the next budget comes around next fall, you'll see even more of President Trump's leadership and priorities reflected, he said. Limbaugh rebutted, saying conservatives are fed up with Republicans who say, we'll get them next time, and kicking the can down the road. You guys were sent there to drain the swamp, he said, challenging Pence. There's a clear Trump agenda that just isn't seeable. It's not visible in this budget, and some people are getting concerned that there's more concern for bipartisan and crossing the aisle working with Democrats than there is for draining the swamp and actually peeling away all of the roughage that is preventing actually moving forward here on so many of these issues that affect people domestically. Pence insisted progress is underway under Trump administration, citing successes for the first 100 days since the president's inauguration. He signed more bills into law than any president in the first 100 days since Harry Truman, Pence said. 13 different bills rolling back an avalanche of regulation and red tape on businesses across the country. 500,000 jobs have been created since the first of the year. And you mentioned the Planned Parenthood issue, he continued. You know, the president recently signed a bill into law that ends the Obama-era regulation that blocks states from banning Planned Parenthood funding. Now states can ban Planned Parenthood funding like we tried to do in the state of Indiana. And Pence reinforced his loyalty to serving beside Trump. This president is fighting every single day to advance his agenda, and I couldn't be more proud to be standing shoulder to shoulder with him. Next article is off of foxnews.com. It says Obamacare replacement bill approved in the House. House Republicans on Thursday narrowly approved their sweeping health care bill aimed at fulfilling a campaign promise to upend Obamacare after resuscitating legislation that had flattened on the floor not 6 weeks earlier. And a Health Care Act passed on a 217 to 213 vote. Get this finished, President Trump declared in a celebratory Rose Garden event surrounded by Republican congressional allies shortly after the vote. Premiums and deductibles will be coming down, and Affordable Care Act is essentially dead. The passage marked Republicans yet toward replacing the Obama administration's signature domestic policy law. The bill heads next to the Senate it faces an uncertain fate. All Democrats voted against the bill on the House floor Thursday afternoon, warning it would jeopardize coverage. 20 Republicans voted no, implying the GOP would lose seats in 2018. Democrats saying, nah, nah, hey, hey, kiss him goodbye toward the end of the voting. But the GOP leaders cheered the result. Of the end of Obamacare, Vice President Pence said in the Rose Garden. Trump praised House Speaker Paul Ryan in Senate passage and predicted an unbelievable victory. The narrow approval Thursday was remarkable considering Ryan had to pull an earlier version from the floor in late March, amid questions over whether the majority party could advance anything on health care amid deep internal divisions. Congressional leaders barraged rank and file holdouts with pressure in recent days to back revised legislation. A lot of us have been waiting 7 years to cast this vote, Ryan said Thursday. Capping a fiery debate moments before the vote, Ryan appealed to colleagues to move beyond Obamacare, which he called a failed experiment, citing the situation in Iowa where the last insurer is threatening to leave. Ryan said, "This is a crisis. What protection is Obamacare if there's no health care plan to purchase in your state?" Price told Fox News America's Newsroom earlier Thursday that he expects the Senate to ensure the best possible bill emerges and rejected criticism that the GOP plan to replace the Affordable Care Act would lead to reduced coverage. "What we want to do is have a seamless system, not pull the rug out from under anybody," Price said, claiming the proposal would ensure people with pre-existing conditions remain covered. That issue is a major point of contention. After the original bill was pulled from the floor in March amid conservative resistance, GOP leaders won over some of those lawmakers by including waivers pertaining to Obamacare's coverage requirements, including for those with pre-existing conditions. What's in the GOP healthcare bill? Earlier this week, moderates in turn objected that constituents with pre-existing conditions could effectively be denied coverage by insurers charging them exorbitant premiums. In a final tweak, leaders added billions more to help people with pre-existing conditions afford coverage. Critics say it's still not enough, but the changes helped attract just enough support from conservatives and centrist Republicans to pass. Almost overnight, they had the votes, setting in motion Thursday's action. In a sign of reputation had changed among conservatives since March, the Conservative Club for Growth withdrew its opposition just before Thursday's vote. Democrats, though, continue to rail against the legislation that would overhaul many key provisions of Obamacare. Lawmakers took to the floor to call it a gut punch to America, billionaires, and undertakers. This disastrous bill has been condemned by almost everyone, the House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, said Thursday at a press conference. She said the latest version is worse than the original and rejected claims it would protect those with pre-existing conditions. Now, I will interject here. I'd like to know how she knows, because she surely has not read it. She didn't read the first one before it was voted for. What an idiot. But I digress. The article continues. It says, this is a scar that they will carry, Pelosi said of House Republicans who vote for the plan. A new health bill is necessary to curb rising premium costs and stop insurers from fleecing markets across the country. Doing nothing leaves too many Americans out in the cold, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican, said. We tried the Obamacare way. It is failing remarkably. But in the Senate, some Republicans consider the House measure too harsh. The bill would eliminate tax penalties in Obama's law, which clamped down on people who don't buy coverage, and it erases tax increases in the Affordable Care Act on higher earning people and the health industry. It cuts Medicaid program for low-income people and lets states impose work requirements on Medicaid recipients. It transforms Obama's subsidiaries for millions buying insurance on people's incomes and premium costs into tax credits that rise with consumers' ages. The measure would requirement that family policies cover grown children until the age of 26. But states could get federal waivers from freeing insurers from other Obama coverage requirements. With waivers, insurers could charge people with pre-existing illness far higher rates, boost prices for older consumers to whatever they wish, and ignore the mandates of supplied services like pregnancy care. The bill would block federal payments for a year, considered a triumph for many anti-abortion Republicans. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimated in March that the GOP bill would end coverage for 24 million people over a decade. That office also said the bill's subsidies would be less generous for many, especially lower earning and older people not yet 65 and qualifying for Medicare. A CBO estimate for the cost of the latest version of their bill has not been released. Easily approved a second bill that Republicans wrote to snuff out a glaring political liability. The measure would delete language in the health care measure entitling members of Congress and their staffs to Obama coverage requirements, even if their home states annul them. The next article is off of Conservative Tribune. Second 100 days may be even more epic than the first. Now that President Donald Trump's first 100 days of office are behind him, all eyes are turning to the next 100 days and what sort of major legislation he will be able to get passed. Trump laid out an ambitious agenda when he was campaigning, but so far he has struggled, mostly because of Congress, to get the ball rolling on that agenda. However, in the next 100 days, Trump has some big plans, the Daily Signal reported. We want to have legislation that has profound impact on religious liberty, one that has profound impact on education, and that has profound impact on healthcare. Helen Ferrer, White House Media Affairs Director, explained in an interview with the Daily Signal. Tax reform plan, which he outlined last month, will be a big priority, along with renegotiating, or at least starting the process of renegotiating NAFTA. Actually get some health care legislation passed too. When it comes to protecting religious liberty, something that many diehard conservatives have been waiting for eagerly, Ferrer simply said to stay tuned. Keep your eyes open for religious liberty, she stated, particularly noting the provision in federal law known as the Johnson Amendment, which prohibits tax-exempt religious groups from actively taking part in political campaigns. It's going to be an issue. The president made a commitment about the Johnson Amendment, and I think he's going to keep that commitment. And you can watch the full interview in a video in this URL if you pull it up. Good first 100 days in office. While he may not have gotten major pieces of legislation through Congress, he certainly learned a lot about how things work, don't work in our nation's capital. Trump will undoubtedly use his knowledge over the next 3 months to push his agenda through Congress. No one expected Trump to magically fix Washington, D.C. in his first 100 days. It's a pretty big swamp, and it's going to take some time to fully drain it. Taken significant actions to muck it out, and we are sure he will continue to make America great again for the next 100 days. Have this episode completed. Before I end the show, though, I want to remind everyone to keep the Bundys in your prayers. I don't know if you have been keeping abreast of what's going on out in Nevada or not, but Emmett Bundy has been in a real mess in the prison. The guards have really been giving him the business. So you might want to keep up on that. He had a shirt laying on his bunk, which apparently is against the rules, and a guard took it away from him, and he took the shirt back from the guard, and then a squabble ensued, and they ended up putting him in a shower stall in shackles for 13 hours underwater. He ended up with 2 shoulders dislocated in the whole process of the whole thing. He's been on YouTube in some phone interviews about what all transpired. And apparently the other inmates that witnessed this are being bullied by the system if they try to complain about this. And as things have escalated throughout the day yesterday, there is not going to be any visitation for any of the inmates in this prison over the weekend. They're trying to really put the pressure on the inmates to crack down on the Bundys for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't understand what in the world is going on with this, because they shouldn't even be in jail in the first place. They committed no crime. They committed no violent crime. They should have been out on bail long ago. They should not be in prison to begin with, let alone being bullied and harassed and brainwashed and, you know, whatever foolishness that the guards or the people that run this prison seem to think that they need to be going through. There are phone numbers all over the internet and emails and addresses that you can write and call to raise hell about this. Many of the people that I know have written to the White House or called the prison. The sheriff in that county is not going to do anything about it. He put out a announcement today that unless you actually witnessed it happening, they don't want to hear from you. And they have people that are investigating in the prison. Now, what good that's going to do, I don't know, because, you know, if you're a prisoner in there and you complain about it, then they're just going to crack down on you, beat the hell out of you, and shackle you and throw you in solitary. Right now, I guess Ammon is in solitary. I think Ryan is also in solitary. Pete Santilli apparently wanted to get some of the prisoners to fill out some complaints about it, and the guards told him if he did, that there'd be consequences facing him. So it's a very corrupt system. I encourage everybody to email the White House. There are email touch with them. I think it's whitehouse.gov, and you can write to the White House. You know, I mean, if Trump can't do something about this, I don't know who can. He's in charge of all these cabinet members that he's appointed. Department of Justice should be involved in this. But apparently, from what I understand, Trump is invested in the prisons, in the federal prisons. So he makes money off of all this. And that really irks me. You know, he should not be invested in them. He should divest himself of the federal prisons, and he should stand up for the American people that are in prison. Ones that have not committed a violent crime should be allowed bail. This is absolutely ridiculous. These guys have been in jail over a year. Over 400 days now they have been in prison and haven't had trial. This could be you. I mean, think about this. This could very easily be you. Would you not want someone to stand up for you? If enough American people raise hell about this and say, we've had enough, this is ridiculous, we're not going to have these people in jail being beaten, being thrown in solitary, being denied food, being shackled, having their limbs dislocated with no medical attention. His shoulders were dislocated. He had to snap them into place himself. They would not give him any medical attention. What the hell is that? What country do we live in where that's allowed to happen to American citizens? What happened to speedy trial? I don't call over 400 days without a trial being speedy. I don't know about you. How would you like to be sitting in there that long, waiting for your case to come to trial? You haven't even done anything except try to protect your home and your property and your business. That's all they tried to do against a tyrannical BLM. So you need to think about that. Look up the information. It's all over YouTube. Get in touch with your politicians and start raising some hell. If you live any place close to Southern Nevada, make a visit to the prison this weekend. There'll be a whole contingent of people down there marching. And with that being said, I'll let y'all go. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so that everybody can hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that, and that way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.